A wildlife rescue team rushed to a mountain bridge after a young grizzly cub lost its footing, and what happened next left everyone breathless. The cub plummeted into the icy canyon below, but this wasn't the end. In fact, it was just the beginning of something no one could have predicted, a story of survival, of trust rebuilt, and of a bond between species that would melt even the coldest heart. What one woman did next, and how the bear responded, will stay with you forever. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications. These true and emotional stories are what the world needs more of, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The bridge stood nearly 70 feet above the river gorge, a rusted relic of an old logging route in northern Montana. It wasn't open to traffic anymore. Only hikers and wildlife passed over it now, its cracked pavement dusted with pine needles, its sides flanked by warped wooden guardrails. That morning, fog clung to the canyon like breath held too long. Maya Jensen, 34, wildlife technician and rescue responder, had been called out for what the dispatcher called a code gray. That usually meant a lone animal in distress. But what she saw as she pulled up in her four-wheeler was nothing she had prepared for. A small group of tourists stood frozen near the middle of the bridge, clutching phones, backpacks forgotten at their feet. Some had their hands to their mouths. One man looked ready to jump in after what they'd seen. And then she saw it, the cub. A young grizzly, no more than 8 months old, had slipped through a section of broken railing. Fresh scratch marks scarred the wood where its tiny claws had tried and failed to hold on. Now, all that remained were frantic, muddy paw prints on the ledge. Maya's chest tightened. "Where did it fall?" she asked urgently. A woman pointed, voice shaking. "There. It just disappeared." Maya rushed to the edge and leaned out. Below, the river surged between sharp rocks, brown with snowmelt. But something caught her eye, a broken pine tree lodged along the cliff wall halfway down. And then, movement. The cub, alive, tangled in a mess of branches, its body wedged awkwardly but safe, for now. It was crying out in sharp, piercing whines. Not roars. Not growls. Panic. Pain. And fear. Maya's breath hitched. She turned back to the group. "Call in air support now. We need climbing gear, medkits, and a tranquilizer team on standby." One man mumbled, "It's just a bear." Maya shot him a look. "No," she said, voice firm. "It's a baby." Within minutes, more responders arrived. Ropes were thrown, anchors secured, and Maya volunteered to rappel down herself. She didn't hesitate. As she descended, the cub's cries grew louder. Branches snapped beneath her boots. The wind shifted, bringing the scent of wet fur and sap. 20 feet above the water, she reached the tree and saw his eyes, wide, terrified, brown as the soil, shining with pain. "Easy, baby," she whispered. "I'm here." The cub flinched, then stilled. His breath came in short gasps. She reached for him slowly, careful not to spook him further. His back paw was twisted awkwardly, possibly broken, but he was alive. So alive. The extraction was delicate, slow. It took nearly an hour to free him and get them both safely back to the bridge. As they emerged over the railing, the crowd went silent. The cub lay limp but breathing in Maya's arms, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The ranger next to her whispered, "What now?" She looked down at the tiny bear and then up at the forest. "We give him a name," she said. "Hope." He fell from the sky into the river gorge, but what came next would lift him far higher than anyone imagined. Back at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center just outside Glacier National Park, the team moved quickly. The grizzly cub, now officially registered as case number 1089, unofficially called Hope, was carried into the clinic on a stretcher made of rope and tarp, still wrapped in the same silver thermal blanket Maya had wrapped him in on the bridge. He wasn't crying anymore, just breathing, shallow but steady. Maya followed closely behind, boots tracking mud across the floor, her hands stained with dirt, sap, and blood. Dr. Ellis, the lead vet, glanced up as they entered. "Let's get vitals and a full workup. Maya, I want you out of here." "I'm not leaving him. He's sedated. We've got it." She didn't move. Her eyes locked on the cub's curled paw, which twitched involuntarily. She sat on the floor, her back against the clinic wall, and waited in silence for 3 hours. It wasn't the longest rescue she'd ever done. It wasn't the most dangerous. But something about this one, this little bear that had clung to a branch above certain death, had gotten under her skin. By dusk, Dr. Ellis stepped out, peeling off gloves. "He'll live," she said softly. "Left rear tibia is fractured, dislocated shoulder, a few cracked ribs. He's dehydrated, malnourished, but no spinal trauma, no internal bleeding." Maya exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. "You saved him," Ellis added. Maya looked through the glass window. Hope was lying under a warming lamp, for in his front leg, breathing evenly. "No," Maya whispered. "He saved himself. I just showed up." The next few days were touch and go. Hope wouldn't eat at first, wouldn't raise his head. His ears twitched at sound, but he remained still, as if waiting to fall again. Maya checked on him constantly. She wasn't supposed to be in the clinic after hours, but she slept in her truck most nights just to be nearby. Then, on the 6th morning, everything changed. She entered the exam room with her usual gentle steps, and Hope raised his head. Their eyes met. Then slowly, painfully, the cub shifted his body toward her and let out a soft, rasping huff. Not a growl. Not distress. Recognition. Maya froze. She crouched, speaking low. "Yeah, I see you too, baby." She didn't touch him, didn't break the barrier of protocol, but something passed between them in that moment. Something bigger than species, bigger than the rescue. Trust. Later that day, the center staff began whispering about it. "Have you seen the way he reacts when she's around? He only lifts his head for her. He knows." And Maya, she knew too. Hope wasn't just recovering. He was choosing to stay alive because someone had stayed with him when he was falling. Sometimes, survival isn't just about the body. It's about the soul and the quiet presence that says, "I won't let you go." Hope was healing. Slowly, he now stood on 3 legs, hobbling from one end of the recovery pen to the other, sniffing the air, occasionally pressing his nose to the wire fencing whenever Maya entered. The staff kept their distance, not from fear, but respect. It was clear that this cub, who'd nearly died alone in a ravine, had formed something rare, an attachment. It wasn't full imprinting. Maya knew the science too. Well, for that, but it was something deeper than instinct. The kind of connection forged not by force, but by shared survival. And it made some people uncomfortable. One morning, as Maya entered the rehab yard carrying a bowl of pureed trout and vitamins, she found Calvin Reed, the center director, waiting by the gate. He didn't smile. "He's making progress," she said carefully. Calvin folded his arms. "Too much." Maya frowned. "Meaning?" "He follows you." Responds to your voice. He doesn't do that for anyone else. That's a problem, Maya. He's traumatized. It's normal to bond in care. Not for a grizzly. Especially not one we hope to reintroduce. If he starts to rely on human contact, on you, we lose our window. Maya glanced back at the enclosure. Hope had pressed his body to the gate, sniffing for her. His eyes were clear now, alert, but something vulnerable lingered behind them. I'm not teaching him tricks, she said. I'm giving him a chance. Calvin sighed. You're giving him hope. And I'm worried he's giving it back, in the wrong direction. Later that day, the staff voted to restrict her access. No more direct feeding. No more after-hours checks. Only one visit per day, supervised. Maya didn't fight it, at least not out loud. But that night, sitting alone in the truck, hands clenched around the thermos she never drank from, she felt it. The ache of being cut off from something that had started to heal her too. She didn't say it often, but Maya had lost something years ago, a brother, a backcountry hiker who never came home. And she'd never stopped searching. Never stopped showing up for the wild. Hope wasn't just another rescue. He was the first one who looked back. And now she had to choose, follow protocol or fight for a bear cub who had already fallen once, and was about to be abandoned again. The next morning, she arrived before sunrise. She sat just outside the gate, silent. No food. No touch. Just presence. And hope. He limped to the fence, lay down, and stared at her through the metal, and stayed for an hour. 2, as the sun rose behind them. Because sometimes, the ones who can't be saved by the rules are the ones who save you from yourself. She couldn't reach through the fence. But the bond was already there, beyond touch, beyond protocol, beyond doubt. The article dropped at 9:04 a.m. The headline read, "Grizzly Cub Too Close to Caretaker, Is Hope Too Human to Survive in the Wild?" Within hours, the center's inbox was flooded. Reporters. Animal rights groups. Conservation purists. Curious strangers with strong opinions. Some were supportive, moved by the story, inspired by the rescue. But others weren't. That bear is a danger waiting to happen. You're creating a pet, not a wild animal. This is how people get hurt. And always, Maya's name was at the center of it. She hadn't asked to be. She hadn't spoken to the press. But someone on the board had leaked internal footage, Maya sitting quietly at the fence, Hope lying on the other side, their eyes locked. It was real. It was beautiful. And now, it was being twisted into something dangerous. Calvin called her into his office. The door barely clicked shut before he spoke. "We're moving, Hope." Maya froze. "What?" "To the northern compound. Limited human interaction. Strict rehab protocols. No more feeding. No more contact. He's not ready." "He doesn't have a choice," Calvin said. "And neither do you." She left without speaking. She walked straight to the rehab yard and found Hope pacing near the gate, sensing something was off. When he saw her, he let out a sharp chuff, a vocalization she'd come to recognize as anxiety. She knelt down outside the fence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He stopped, lay down slowly, and rested his head on the dirt, eyes never leaving hers. That afternoon, 2 handlers arrived with a tranquilizer team. Hope didn't fight. He didn't growl. But as the dart took hold, he staggered. And as he fell sideways, he looked not at the handlers, but at Maya, and made one last sound. Soft. Low. Wounded. She stood outside the truck as they drove him away, arms folded across her chest, her knuckles white. Behind her, one of the junior staff whispered, "He trusted us." Maya turned, voice low but sharp. "No. He trusted me." That night, she didn't sleep. She wrote a letter, not to the board, not to Calvin. To Hope. She folded it, slipped it into her pocket, and sat in the truck, facing the dark trees. "If they won't let me near you again, I need you to remember one thing: you fell, and I came. And I would do it again, even if no one else would." He didn't roar. He didn't lash out. But that look when they took him away was louder than any sound she'd ever heard. It happened on a Tuesday. Clouds hung low over the valley, the kind that promised snow even in spring. Maya was on field duty, inspecting trail cams along the ridge. Trying to stay busy. Trying not to think about the compound. Or the silence that had grown between her and the rest of the team. Then the radio crackled. Code red. Northern enclosure breach. "We have a bear out." Repeat, "A bear is out." Maya's blood went cold. There were a dozen bears housed in the northern compound, all in various stages of rehabilitation. But only one had been moved there recently. Only one had reason to run. She jumped into her truck and sped toward the northern perimeter, radioing the command center. "Do not tranquilize. Let me try first." Static. Then Calvin's voice, "If you see him first, you've got 5 minutes. After that, he's a safety risk." "He's not a threat," she snapped. "He's scared." She found the breach just north of the feeding station, a segment of fencing weakened by last week's freeze. Claw marks in the dirt. Tracks leading toward the tree line. And there, no more than 30 feet away, was Hope. He wasn't running. He was waiting. Standing still in the trees, his coat slick with rain, his breathing fast but steady. Maya stepped out of the truck slowly. No jacket. No gloves. She raised both hands. "Hope." He twitched. Then took one step toward her. She crouched low, speaking like she had on the bridge weeks ago. "I'm not here to catch you. I'm just here." He sniffed the air. His front paw dragged slightly, a lingering stiffness from the fall, but he didn't turn away. She sat. "Right there in the mud. I never should have let them take you." Hope moved again, closer now. 20 feet. 10. Then, incredibly, he stopped just a few feet from her and sat. They stayed that way, in silence, until headlights pierced the mist. The other rangers. Calvin stepped out first, rifle slung low, eyes darting between the two of them. Maya stood up, slow and steady. "I've got him," she said. Calvin hesitated, then lowered the rifle. "We'll give you 5 minutes." That was all she needed. Hope was sedated gently this time, with her voice in his ear, her hand on the ground beside him. She stayed with him until the truck arrived. And when the sedation took hold, his body limp but safe, Maya placed her letter, now smudged and soaked, in the corner of the crate. "You're more wild than they understand. But I saw you, and I never stopped believing you'd come back." He didn't escape to run. He escaped to find the only person who ever made him feel like he mattered, as more than just an animal. It was decided Hope would not be returned to the northern compound. But he also wouldn't be released. Not yet. The story had become too big. Too many eyes, too many opinions, too many risks. So the sanctuary board made a decision that felt more like a performance than a plan. They organized a controlled observation demonstration, one final session filmed and observed by wildlife officials, behaviorists, and donors to determine if Hope could still be released into the wild. Maya was invited to attend, but not to speak. Just watch. They led Hope into the training arena on a soft harness, no restraints, flanked by handlers in full gear. Cameras rolled from every corner. Scientists took notes. Executives watched from folding chairs with coffee and disinterest. Maya stood alone near the back fence. Hope looked different now, taller, stronger, his coat fully grown in. But his eyes hadn't changed. And when he saw her, he stopped, dead center in the arena, and sat. He didn't growl. He didn't pace. He just looked at her. Not the cameras. Not the crowd. Her. The handlers hesitated, then backed away. For a moment, the arena was still. Then Maya stepped forward. One of the observers stood. "She's not authorized to." Calvin raised a hand. "Let her." She walked toward him slowly. Hope didn't move until she crossed the marked boundary. Then, gently, without fanfare, he rose, took 3 slow steps, and lowered his head right in front of her. It wasn't submission. It wasn't trained behavior. It was recognition. And every person in that arena felt it. No roar. No drama. Just the weight of a bond that had never been broken. Maya didn't touch him. She didn't have to. She just whispered, "You made it." Hope let out a deep exhale. And for the first time in his life, he turned away from her. Not because he was afraid. Because he was ready. He walked calmly to the far gate and waited. The observers began murmuring. A reporter whispered, "That's wild behavior." Another added, but with memory. With intent. Maya didn't say a word. She just nodded. Because she knew Hope wasn't staying because of her. He was leaving because of her. That night, the board approved his release. It would take 2 weeks to prep, but the decision was final. Hope would return to the wild, and he would do it on his own terms. She saved him when he fell. He found her when he was taken. And now, when the whole world was watching, he showed them what love looks like when it lets go. The morning of the release was quiet, too quiet. Maya stood at the edge of the forest enclosure, arms crossed against the cold. A soft mist curled through the trees. She could hear her breath, her heartbeat, the faint rustle of branches above. The gate stood open. Hope was already awake inside the transitional pen, alert, moving with steady confidence. His muscles had filled in. His stride was strong. He was a bear now, not a cub. But he still looked at her every few minutes, as if checking, as if asking. Maya nodded softly, almost imperceptibly. "Go." No commands. No applause. Just instinct. He stepped through the gate, paused at the threshold, and then walked into the wild. No hesitation. No turning back. And Maya, despite everything in her heart screaming to call him, to run after him, stood still. Letting him go was the hardest thing she had ever done. But it was also the right thing. Because this wasn't her story anymore. It was his. By the time the news hit the internet, headlines like "Famous Rescue Bear Returned to the Wild" and "Grizzly Cub Who Bonded with Human Rehabilitator Now Free," Maya was already back on the trail. Hiking gear on, hands scratched from fresh underbrush, following prints just like she used to with her brother. That evening, she returned to the edge of the valley, to a flat rock where she could see the treetops roll endlessly into the horizon. She sat and waited. Not for hope. Not really. But for the feeling that came next. Peace. It washed over her like a warm wind through cold pine, a knowing that she had done the one thing no one else had dared. She saw him. From the moment he fell to the moment he flew. 2 weeks later, a ranger on patrol found a cluster of trees torn open near the riverbank, classic grizzly foraging behavior. And in the center, a stick, not chewed, just snapped clean in half, laid beside a pine cone. Placed not by chance, but by choice. A sign, maybe. But Maya never claimed to know for sure. She only smiled when they told her. Because even if hope never returned, even if she never saw him again, he had already left something behind. Something no one could take. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes that love, real love, means knowing when to let go. Because sometimes the most incredible thing isn't the fall, but what we choose to do after.